Now, as we've mentioned earlier, the jobless rate now sits at 3.9%. We haven't seen a number like that since 1974. I remember it well. Sturt went top. An extraordinarily good result for the country right now, of course. So a short time ago, I caught up with the Treasurer, Josh Frydenberg, and I started by asking him why with such a low unemployment rate, why aren't we seeing higher wages growth?
Well, we've seen wages at 2.4% through the year, but importantly, the Reserve Bank has said through its business liaison that it's seeing about 40% of firms paying wages greater than 3% increases, and other businesses providing wage increases that are even more significant than that. A tighter labour market, by definition, will see an upward push on wages as employers compete for workers. So this is good news for the economy. At 3.9%, the unemployment rate is its lowest level in nearly 50 years. Its lowest level since August 1974. Female unemployment is actually at 3.7%. And it just shows you how resilient the economy has been in the face of the biggest economic shock since the Great Depression. And Chris, you'd be familiar with the test that Labor set us early on in the pandemic, when they said the biggest single test of the Morrison government's management of the pandemic would be what happens to unemployment and jobs. Well, today they got their answer.
Yeah, it is a great result. Is this as low as unemployment goes now? Is this the new norm, that if you can be in the high threes, that's pretty much full employment?
Well, as you know, the RBA can see unemployment going to 3.5%. And in the budget, we forecast that the unemployment rate would fall to 3.75%. So there's still some way to go. And again, this paints the stark contrast of the economy we inherited from Labor, where unemployment was at 5.7% and rising, and the economy that we have today, where it's at 3.9% unemployment and falling. So they're very different economies, and we've been able to see the labour market remain firm and strong, even despite the disruption of COVID. And at the same time, we've delivered tax relief for more than 11 million households and more than 3.5 million small businesses. We've made record investments in infrastructure, and we've guaranteed the essential services like health, education, disability support, mental health, women's safety, and other investments that we're making as well.
I've got to get you on Labor's costings. They seem to be saying the government's been recklessly spending money, but they're going to spend at least another $7.5 billion more on top of that. It seems extraordinary. And then there's tens of billions they're going to borrow off budget to invest, they say, in the NBN and in electricity transmission. Could that be inflationary?
Well, certainly Labor's spending will be inflationary and will put upward pressure on interest rates, and it will only be funded, their increased spending, with higher taxes. So they'll dust off the $387 billion of higher taxes that they had at the last election to pay for their commitments at this election. This is the reality, and this is what every viewer of your program tonight needs to understand. In Labor's document they released today, every year debt will be higher, every year deficits will be higher, and every year taxes will be higher. Now, we also know that this doesn't tell the full story, that they haven't funded, and in fact they haven't costed, most of their commitments. There's big holes in that document they provided today. There is no independent verification by Finance and Treasury of their costings. They're asking us to take their word for it. Well, that's just not good enough from the alternative government. And it's no wonder that Anthony Albanese has waited to just the day before the election to reveal these costings, which is not telling the full story of how much extra Labor will spend.
And indeed, he's promised to have another budget later this year if Labor does win the election, which is quite extraordinary.